All right, so my parents are getting older. They are both 60 years of age, and they're in that stage of life where they start thinking about retirement. And in the last year or so, we really got together to answer a question that maybe you're struggling with right now with your parents, which is, can they afford to retire? Because I'll tell you, not everyone can afford to retire. Retirement looks very different for different people depending on how they planned when they were younger. And so I'll just say this, my parents did not plan the way that I would recommend you planning right now. And we'll go through the reasons why. But most importantly, I'm shooting this video to share the story and share the process that we went through as a team to get them in a place where they feel they can retire comfortably, they know the numbers, and they're gonna do this with confidence. So if that sounds like something that could help you where you're at right now, keep watching. Okay, welcome back. This is Joshua Talks Money. I built and sold my tech company, and now I focus a lot on investing and personal finance. So I share stories just like this one every week. I'd love for you to consider subscribing. And let's talk about this week's story. My parents are both pastors. So they grew up, as I grew up, we were in this nonprofit world. And let me just say, being a pastor's kid, it is not what you may think or hear about in the media. It's not Joel Osteen of the world. We did not have a mansion or a Lamborghini. In fact, we were lower middle income, if that. There was times that were actually very hard, but my parents did the best that they could. And the most important theme of this is they put others first. So I watched them throughout their lives, just taking a step back and instead prioritizing the community, prioritizing people that they helped, those who are sick, single moms, people in need. And so that's something that's really, really admirable and had an impact on my life. However, in that process, they did not necessarily have access to or the structures for your traditional retirement opportunities. And, if they had been working a 9-to-5 job in corporate America, they may have a 401k that they would invest in each month and start to build that over their lifetime. And that is not what they did. Most of their working life was in that situation. But for your parents or for you, maybe you just simply didn't contribute to a retirement fund, even if you had the opportunity to. So this can still apply to you. So in the years of my father's life that he was working outside of the church, he was in facilities, a facilities manager. And in those opportunities, he did have the chance to invest in a 401k. My mom, she worked primarily in daycare and nanny work, which was mostly cash. And so without setting up a SEP IRA or corporation or anything, she didn't necessarily have the ability to go invest the way that I think she should have. Let me pause there and just say that this is not unique to my parents. Most people, they do not know anything about personal finance. This isn't something broadly taught in school or broadly pushed by their parents. And so if you figured it out on your own early, you're set. But most people didn't. And so they're behind. And so I think that's really important. And that's why a reason why I started this channel. One other thing about my father's investment retirement situation is, as he did contribute to 401ks during the periods of time which he could, later in life, there were situations that arose where he had to pull money out. So effectively, the retirement that he did build up, there were periods of time during emergencies or big expenditures that required tapping into that money. So both of those out the gate are things you want to avoid. You do not want to start late when you are investing for retirement, and you do not want to disrupt that investment as it compounds over your life. There's not only the disruption of the compounding effect and appreciation, you will get taxed and penalized for pulling out retirement money early. Okay, so what did we do about this situation? Well, it was just about a year or so ago where I started to think, hey, I've been putting a lot of time learning these concepts on my own. I feel really empowered personally with my family's finances, and I want to help others, which is why I have this channel. I should probably be helping my parents. And given that I've had some bad experiences with financial advisors, I wanted to figure out how I can help them on my own without steering them incorrectly. I'm not a professional, so how can I make sure I'm not giving them bad advice? But how can I just partner with them? And so here's what I did. I started with the basics. I said, hey guys, we need to get a plan here. We need to take a look at what the actual math says, what the real numbers are for you to stop working. You don't want to work till you're 70 or longer just to be able to afford to live. You want to be able to relax and enjoy retirement, the picture that we all think about when we see or hear that word. So first things first, we sat down and analyzed their current financial picture. This is where we looked at the things like their debt, their monthly bills, their monthly income, and we opened the books, and it was a lot of transparency where they shared that information with me. What I realized is that they had a lot of debt based on two vehicles that they had, credit card debt, and then they had their mortgage. We also looked at the amount of retirement that they did have, and we started to think, how long can this actually stretch when you do retire? So a couple things on this. What I realized was, hey, we got to get rid of this debt. We need to eliminate the credit card debt. It's high interest. We need to try to get out of these vehicle payments and start to free up your monthly cash flow so you can put it towards retirement investing. Hang on, gotta drink some coffee here. All right, so first thing is we started to attack the debt, just like Dave Ramsey recommends, kind of that debt snowball. The thing was, I decided to go after the highest interest debt, which was the credit card. He doesn't normally say to do that. He just says smallest debt first. That's where I don't necessarily agree. And so we started to pay off this credit card, allocating as much money as we could from their check to that debt, which was about $3,000 or $4,000, and to knock that out. At the same time, they had two car loans. I think one was $7,000 and one was $8,000. And so I posed this question, do you need two cars? Really think about it. If you couldn't afford two cars, what would you do? And as they started to think about that, they made some changes to their schedule and to the way that they would coordinate plans. And they said, yeah, we could probably get by on a single car. And so they ended up listing that car for sale. And I can't remember exactly the sale price, but it was able to knock out, if not all, most of the debt against the vehicle with some other cash they had. And so now this big chunk is gone. Credit card is gone. They have one car payment now, and they're starting to free up that monthly cash flow, as you can see. Okay, so the next thing was they had their home. And I want to say the home was basically valued at around $215. I think the note they had was around $190. So there was some equity within the home. And this was right as the housing market was starting to really boom through the other side of COVID. So I posed another question. I said, what if you sold your house? Now, my mom loved this home. So this was like a dream home for her, essentially. It was beautiful. They got it for a great price. And it was a home that they could retire in and see themselves in through the rest of their lives. However, this loan theoretically would outlive them based on the amount of years that were remaining. And it was a huge amount of space for just them both. And so those are the types of things that I think when you're trying to really make big changes to set yourself up for future success, even in a later stage of life, you have to think outside of the box. And I said, why don't you sell this house? So we did. We listed the home together. My wife is a realtor. And so we were able to list that property. I want to say they sold it for like $300K, something crazy. This was when there was competing instant cash offers from banks and other investors. And they got something like 10 offers within the first week, took the highest all cash deal, and they ended up netting about $100,000 from this transaction. So this is just incredible. If you think about my dad earning income from his primary job, the amount of time, the amount of years to just take the surplus cash flow from a net paycheck and get to 100 grand would take several years. So this just accelerated their retirement in ways that was not possible without this move. So that was something that's really cool. And with those proceeds from the home, then they were able to go knock out the debt on the other car, right? So the profit from the house sale paid off the debt, and now they're entirely debt-free with a lump sum of cash. They're able to free up the monthly cash flow, and now their entire picture has changed. Okay, so where do they live? Well, this is actually part of the bigger story. They decided that it was time for them to get closer to where my wife and I live. So they're on the west coast of Florida. We are in South Florida. And we worked together to get them to move down here because we have 2 young children and it was going to be great for them to be grandparents nearby. And so they actually ended up moving into our house with us. And this was for a period of time going to just be a temporary thing until they bought a condo. But as of right now, that they are still with us, and that's strategic because this is where we are able to help. Our family is able to help set them up and take off some of the burden of a big down payment and bigger monthly payments of a condo, and save some of that money by contributing here at our home and living here with us. Now, I know that's like an incredibly amazing opportunity and not something everyone has the privilege to do. So I get that. You're going to need to work within your situation. But what I will say is if you are in a position financially where you could help your parents, I think you should probably do that. I look back to all the help they gave me, all the help my mother-in-law and father-in-law gave my wife. And it's really interesting. It's kind of like this point in your life where you start to see the big picture and realize, wait, I was just a terror and such a drain on my family. They dealt with all of my nonsense as I was younger. And as I get older, as I start to earn more, as I start to become more independent, it's so empowering and cool to think I return the favor. I'm there to help them in ways that I'm able to at this point in my life. Okay, so let's recap there. They're debt-free. They moved down with us. They've lowered their burden on their monthly income. And now they're in a place where they can really start to accelerate their investing for retirement. So here's that part of the plan. If you are in a position where you're ready to crank up your investing for retirement, here is what we did. First, we opened a Vanguard Roth IRA. So right now, because of my father's age of 60, he's able to contribute $7,000 per year. So in 2021, when we sold the house together, $7,000 of those proceeds then went to the Roth IRA in that year. In 2022, $7,000 goes into that Roth IRA again. When we did this, we put the money into the Roth IRA account, but we actually did not invest it yet. And that was because the market was really selling off. And me personally, I wasn't sure if that was going to continue. You cannot time the market, but I recommended we wait, just see where things are. And I'm glad we did, because right around the time of that happening, when we funded the account, not when we invested, but when we funded the account, the markets dropped about 20% from that point. So I'm glad it worked out that way. It would have been a major bummer to lose 20%. At least, on paper. And so psychologically, for someone who's never invested this level, I think to see that just drop would have probably been kind of a bummer for my parents. Okay, so the next thing we did is I went to a financial advisor. Yes, but this is a paid financial planner. And I said, look, I don't need you to sell me any crazy expensive insurance products. I've already had that experience. I don't need you to manage a big portfolio. All we are looking for, my parents and I, is a professional to just check us on some of the things we're thinking through, to guide us in areas that we don't have the expertise in, but ultimately be a partner through this process of getting my parents to retirement. So I met with someone, his name is Josh Davis. He's down here in South Florida. And this dude is awesome, younger guy. And he's been fantastic. I've used him not only for my personal financial kind of strategy, but now with my parents. And so find someone like that. You can pay by the hour. You can go through, and it's really a transactional engagement that can help you. Okay, so then we started to think, where do we invest the money? I invest in things like the QQQ ETF, that's the NASDAQ 100. I invest in a lot of single stocks, which I never thought or recommended to do. That is not what my parents should be investing in, because I'm much younger and I have a higher risk tolerance based on the decades I hopefully have for compounding. For them, they need something a little more conservative. But we dealt with this kind of tension of they're so far behind of where they want to be. if they get into something more conservative, it may not have the upside to catch them up the way that we'd like. So that can get risky pretty fast. What we decided to do is put a bulk of their money into a target date fund. This is the Vanguard 2030 Target Date Fund, ticker symbol VTHRX. And I've done a video about target date funds, which is basically a fund that tapers risk as you get closer to the date, which is the retirement date, retirement age effectively. So that would be 7 years from now when my father is 67. So we plan to put probably about 75% into that fund. So I think that fund has averaged like somewhere around 7% a year. There's also a 2% dividend. It's nothing incredible. It's not going to 10x like some growth stock, but it is going to appreciate. It is going to keep his risk lower. Okay, so for this, for the other 25-30%, we are considering either VOO, this is the S&P 500 Index ETF, or maybe some QQQ, the NASDAQ 100 ETF. And that's a lot more risk and a lot more upside. And that's kind of the split we are considering right now with some of the cash that is in a lump sum and some of the future contributions to retirement. Okay, so let's talk about deploying that cash. So we have the 7K from the 2021 Roth IRA contribution, 7K for 2022 Roth IRA. We're actually going to do another Roth IRA for 2022 for my mom. So she will have 7K that we'll put into hers. And so now we've got 21,000 going to be deployed. So then that leaves us with this lump sum minus the Roth contributions, and we're going to open a brokerage account with Vanguard. This is basically using post-tax money. You invest in stocks or other assets. When you sell those, you will pay capital gains, but it is not a tax sheltered type of retirement fund. This is just a straight up brokerage account. But we're doing that because we want to have another option to start investing, even if it's outside of some of the traditional retirement methods. My dad does have some retirement funds in a 401k at his former facilities job. So we plan to go to Vanguard yet again, and we're going to open up a rollover IRA. That way we can basically take the money from the 401k and put it over into Vanguard's rollover IRA. And we want to do this because you can see the theme here. We want all the funds ideally in one brokerage in one place where we can log in, kind of see it all there and manage it there. That's what I do. I think it makes it a lot easier, and that's what we're going to do for my parents. Okay, so one of the last steps we're going to do is, as my dad does continue to work at least through age 67, at his new place of employment, he's a facilities manager at a large church here in South Florida. He is going to try to max out his contributions to retirement. And what we're thinking of actually doing is having him call up the brokerage that they use and allocate as much, nearly all of his net paycheck, and have that go into a Roth 403b. This is basically a post-tax type of retirement account at a nonprofit. This is the same as a Roth 401k. And what that means is when he does retire and pulls from those funds, those will be tax-free. That's the benefit of doing that. Same with the Roth IRA I mentioned earlier. I'm throwing a lot of different concepts at you. I've done videos on almost all of them. You can just check my channel to see if you want to learn about an individual topic I'm mentioning. Okay, so picture this. We're going to have him basically have no paycheck because for some period of time, we're going to have all of his net check go into retirement. And what we're then going to do is have him live off the cash that he still has from the home sale. So what this does is it basically starts funding retirement through the paycheck that he does get, and then he can live off the cash until we invest the equivalent amount of money from this check, from this cash bucket into retirement through that method. Does that make sense? Depending on how long that may take, we may not do that entirely. We may actually deploy some into the brokerage account, but we're trying to figure out the math there. Whew, okay, that's a lot. That's a lot of stuff going on. And I'd be happy to answer questions on any of this. A lot of this comes from some of the advice I mentioned from Josh and some of the thinking that I've been doing. And so I'm happy to share more details in the comments if you want to ask a question there. Okay, so let's wrap all this up. We've done all these things, lots of moves, and for what? Well, it is to get to this retirement number. And so there's actually this rule of 25 you may have heard. And basically it says, think of the amount of income you want in retirement, and you need to multiply that by 25. And what that means is, let me do some quick math. I'll bust out my phone. Okay, so let's say for easy math, I want to have $100,000 a year in income when I'm retired, just from my investments. So that would be multiplied by 25. That would be $2.5 million you would need in a retirement account in the market, so that you could pull from that every year and theoretically never run out of money. And I think the reason for that is, let's pretend that's invested in the S&P 500 and you get a return of 8%. Well, that 100,000 per year from a $2.5 million investment is about 4%. It's about half of the annual return you could expect. And so if you can see, that's living below the hopeful appreciation, and that's how that would work. So for my parents, that number is far lower. They don't need that much money to live. They have minimal expenses now. They don't have dreams of living on a boat or traveling to Bali or anything crazy. And so we're going to get that number much lower, which means the target of the amount of money we want to get to is much lower. And so we started to work through that math, and we said, okay, based on what we have invested, based on the money we plan to invest now that we've unlocked your cash flow, based on Social Security, that's a whole nother video, but we started to calculate a Social Security benefit. What number do we need to get you to so you're comfortable? And then how many years do you need to get that to basically fund the rest of your life? And so we worked through that math. I'm not going to share that here, but if you can think through those different pieces and inputs, you hopefully can do that for your situation. There's a Dave Ramsey retirement calculator that's really awesome. I actually use this almost every day because I think it's cool to run scenarios. Hey, what if I contributed this much per month? What if I had started 10 years ago? What if the market crushes it and I get 10% per year? You can start to really think about scenarios. This is how we basically did it. We said, okay, my dad is 60 years old. We plug that in. We said he's going to retire at 67. We plug that number in. We put how much he has invested currently. We put a monthly number that we would be investing from now every single month until 67. And then we put in an expected return percentage. I think we did maybe 7%, trying to be a little more conservative. And as we spit out that calculation, we could see how much money is there. We then could do that 4% withdrawal rate to see how long that could go. We also what if we just withdrew that over a period of time? So let's say it's $1 million, and we're pulling out 50 grand a year, how long can that go? And so we just kind of went through those numbers. That's what I'd recommend you doing as well. Okay, this might be my longest video ever. I think it's because it's a topic that I'm passionate about. Man, it just feels really good to be able to help your parents however you can. And again, this may not be what you are able to do. It could just be you're able to call your parents and talk to them and give them encouragement and tell them that you love them. It's not all about necessarily finances, but it's about being there and having that bond with them. I think that's something that as we get older, as our parents age, we're going to realize how important and special that is. And it's something you should cherish while you have the chance to do it. Okay, so let's recap this really quick for everybody. You could skip all that and jump to this if you had chosen to. My parents basically started to eliminate debt. They got rid of one of their vehicles, sold that off. They ended up selling their home to realize the equity plus a big profit from the sale. That then allowed them to eliminate all of their debt, becoming debt-free for the first time. Then they were able to downsize their living expenses by moving in with us, although they could have moved into a cheaper place either way. Then they started to invest in tax sheltered retirement funds, such as a Roth IRA or a Roth 403b. And they're starting to max out those contributions to really catch up and take advantage of the catch-up amount because of their age. They're going to be investing in a target date fund, the 2030 Vanguard Fund, which is appropriate for their target retirement date. They will also put some of their investments into a little bit more risky, opportunity for a higher upside, something like the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ 100 index. We've run some numbers to check the math on how much money they need between pulling out investment returns and also tapping into Social Security. How much would that require to fund their life through the rest of their lives? And we ran a few different scenarios to see where we're comfortable and set some targets based on that 7-year timeline. And that is it. Now we have the plan and we are going to start working the plan. And I'm really excited about it. I think it's just such a relieving process when you're in control and you know, and you're intentional about what you're doing, not just for your own finances, but for your family's finances. It doesn't have to be where everybody's figuring out on their own. All right, the biggest takeaway from this is do not leave this up to chance. Do not wait till you're 60 to have a plan. You should start now. If you are 20 years old, if you're 18, 20 years old, I am begging you, start investing, start thinking about this. Run your numbers now. It's going to be incredible to see what you're able to do over your life if you get started early. You will set yourself apart from 99% of people by doing it at that age. And it's really, really easy to do. All right. I hope this was helpful. I hope this was encouraging to you. Hey, if you have no retirement, if you have not thought about this at all, do not give up. Do not worry. Just figure it out by taking responsibility and accountability, coming up with a plan. Love to help however I can. Let me know in the comments if I can do that. Hey, if you know someone who needs to hear this, please share this video with them. I spent this time telling my story to hopefully help people who are in a similar situation. All right, thanks so much. I will be back soon with another video. I'll talk to you then.